welcome back to our second episode in our brand new series of Prep and Process with me. Today's episode is all about sour cherries and making them into cherry jam. So make sure you're checking out the description box below in each of these episodes because I will be sharing not only the recipes but also links to any of the tools that you may need to make these recipes. Additionally, if there's a product that you would love to learn how to process, make sure you're commenting that below so we can make sure we get you an episode in this series all about that product. Now what I'm starting with first is I've washed the jars and now I'm washing the cherries. Obviously this is a very important step. You just want to make sure, even if they're organic, you want to make sure that any dirt or grime or anything is removed from the berries before you start to cook with them. Berries are all nice and clean. We are starting the long process of pitting and destemming all of the berries. Now there are cherry pitters that you could use, and I will link one below, but since the sour cherries are pretty soft, it is really easy just to pull the pit out yourself. And I will mention, as we are destemming and pitting the berries, we're also keeping an eye out to make sure that there are no bad spots being put in or any rotten berries overall, as that can change the flavor of your jam. So here we are going to be chopping up the berries. Now this recipe does call for just cutting them up with a knife, but it is a little bit quicker to toss them in a blender quick and pulse them. You could also use a food processor, but you're going to want to do whatever is for your preference. So if you want larger chunks in your jam, you're gonna wanna just chop them up with a knife. But if you prefer your jam not to have large chunks, then tossing them in a food processor or blender is probably a better option for you. This process until I have 5 cups of chopped berries, and then I'm going to transfer them into the pan to be cooked. But while you're chopping up the berries, you want to make sure you have 2 pans of water on to boil as the recipe calls for below. And one of those pans, you want to make sure once it's brought to a boil that you've got your canning jars and lids in there to start heating up. Now before we start to cook the berries, we're going to add 1/4 cup of your 3 cups of sugar, and we're going to add the entire box of the Sure-Jell fruit pectin. Once that's added, begin to stir and cook over low to medium heat until you see the jam coming to a roaring boil, or a boil that you can no longer stir down. Once you've reached that roaring boil, we're going to add the rest of the 3 cups of sugar into the jam. We're going to stir that in and stir at this boil for 1 minute before removing it from the heat. I do mention this below, but I want to make sure I mention it quick here. As you're boiling the jam, it is really going to expand, so you want to use a much bigger pan than you may be expecting to use. So now it has boiled for 1 minute and we are removing it from the heat. And now we're going to use a metal spoon to separate the foam from the top of the jam. Now you don't have to do this step, but it just makes a prettier jar if the foam is not in the jar of jam. Now with this foam, it is perfectly edible. It tastes just like your jam. There's nothing wrong with it. So we just use it as fresh jam. And now we're ready to put the jam into the jars. So one at a time, we are removing the jars from the boiling water. Make sure to use tongs to do this because it is hot. And we are going to fill the jars with the jam. doing it one at a time to make sure that the jars and the lids are nice and hot as you are doing this. We're gonna fill it so there's about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of room at the top. And then even if it looks clean, you're gonna wanna take a wet rag and clean the top of the jar before placing the lid on, just to ensure that you get a great seal so that your jam will last. Now that it's time to put the lid on, we're gonna remove the lid from the hot water and we're gonna twist it hand tight. We are using a rag here because the jar and the jam is very hot. So once we have closed all the jars, we've placed them into a hot water bath, boiling water bath, for 5 minutes, making sure that there's about 1 inch of coverage over the jars while they're boiling. And now we're removing them from the heat and we're going to place them on the towel where they are going to seal. So we are placing them all very nicely on the towel, and then we're gonna wrap them up real tight and tuck them in for the night. They're going to sit there all wrapped up nice and tight for 24 hours so they can cool very slowly, allowing them plenty of time to seal well and properly. And a good seal is the key to jam that is going to last. Now it is 24 hours later and we are untucking the jam from the night and seeing if it's ready to go. And we want to make sure that all of those lids are sealed nice and tight. If you find one that's not, it either needs to get reprocessed or you need to use it first. So I hope you guys all loved today's episode of Prep and Process with me. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel and like this video to see more similar content. As always, please check out our website at www.cnyregionalmarket.com for all kinds of recipes and vendor updates. And you can also check us out on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, here on YouTube. So I hope you have a wonderful week and we will see you at the market.